what's up? My name is Andrew and this is my interaction system for the Unreal Engine 4 Marketplace. This is a C++ plugin that supports single player, multiplayer, first person, third person, holding buttons and many other stuff. So to show you off, I'm right now using the first person example. If I play, you can see that I've got some widgets. I see that, alright, this is an interactable item. I've got a name because this one is right now selected, and we can choose if you want to show multiple names or not. Also, I've got priority, and the priority tells me if there are multiple items and we can select multiple items at once, then we have to prioritize with which one we want to actually interact first. Usability tells me whether or not something is usable, so I can move closer, and the distance is pretty small, but I can interact with that. And right now this is disabled and I don't see any widgets. I can't do anything with this item. For this item you can also see the distance, and I should make it bigger, but that's whatever, up to you. Reachability just tells me by the raycast if something is not behind a wall or whatever, because for example here I move to this interactable, I subscribe to this one and move a bit to the left, and right now this is not reachable for me. So this is just used so you cannot interact for a wall, but you can ignore that in an option. And also there's for the first person, whether or not a player is looking at the interactable. As you can see, it checks, alright, am I looking at that or not? So that's like the base. And also I've got a third person example, which just instead of that calculates angle, and you can set that pretty easily. In the first person example, first thing you need to do is just add player interaction to your player pawn and then click on that. And first you've got the interaction debug properties, which are just the colors for the text and some setups you can use for the debug strings. Arrow component, and arrow component is used because you can do some shenanigans with your player, like walking on walls, sailing, rotating the whole world or whatever. So for the system to keep up with that, to always know the forward vector, I'm using the arrow component, and you just need to rotate that with the player, and that shouldn't be a problem. But it rotates like by default, so it's really shouldn't be a problem. Next are the widgets. We've got a name widget, interaction widget. This is a 2D widget shows on player screen. Interaction widget on interactable, which is this 3D widget that says interact. Marker, which just tells me, alright, this is an interactable item, and interaction progress. Some of those widgets, like marker, are just a basic 2D brush that does nothing, but others, like name, where's name? Oh, here. Alright. Like name has to inherit from a certain widget class and use a certain event on name change or whatever. But you've got those examples, you can see the parent classes, you can just set it in the class settings and later just use some certain stuff. So yeah, also we need to go to the capsule component, and for me I'm just adding a new object response called Interactable, and I'm just saying, alright, overlap on that, and also remember to block visibility, because the trace on the interactable object to check reachability is traced on visibility, so you need to block that, otherwise you will always have a false response. And you just need to set it to custom, query and physics, pawn object, and just on this new interactable just overlap, and yeah, and visibility to block. And what else? Next things is using first person modes, and this is up to you, and if it does, you can check, alright, player has to look on the object instead of checking angle. Can we select only one interactable or more, show only one interactable name, so we can, for example, show multiple names. Right now I see the name of each actor I can interact with. Also, to just set the name and set the text on the widgets, I can simply go to my interactable and say Joe, and with Joe I can talk. And now if I click play, I've got Joe and I can talk with him. And for the widgets you can set up whatever you want, that's totally up to you. And if you don't want a certain widget, for example you don't want this 2D widget, you just go to your third person, you go to your interaction widget blueprint and you set it to nothing. And now it won't show. So the whole system is really solid, like trust me, you won't break it. It's done really safe for you, so something might not work because you didn't set up something correctly, but you can just ask me on Discord or yeah. The link is in the description. And for the rest, we've got can show system log, so we've got a system log for the output log for the programmers or whatever to check if something is what's pretty much happening, but those are just basic stuff like what you subscribe with, what's unsubscribed, so on and so forth. Hide interactable name when player can interact, so we can hide the name when we can interact. Hide interaction marker when player can interact. Hide interactable name when interactable is unreachable, so when something is unreachable we just can hide the interactable name and marker, so we won't see it, because the certain thing is unreachable for us. Rotate widgets towards player camera and rotate widgets towards player pawn. If we won't select, if we select both of them, then we'll rotate widgets towards camera as far as I remember, but this is up to you for that. Actually, I can test it. Yeah, to camera. Alright. But if you select, for example, only pawn or only camera, then you will get for a certain thing that you selected. So that's really up to you. Alright, so those are the players, and the next thing is the interactables. But also for the players we got the events. So to interact with stuff, you just have that press E. You can in your project do this in player controller, whatever you want, like that's totally up to you. And I've got few functions, and the first one of them is interactables. It just interacts on a client. Stop interaction, and this is used for a button hold. If you don't want to use button hold, you don't need to use that function. And also interact with interactables on server, and it just interacts on server. So pretty much I have a multiplayer interaction, because for example if I choose an online game with 2 players, and right now I'm interacting with interactables on client. So if I let me first move this guy actually over here. So if I interact with Joe, you can see on my client 2 it's disabled, but on my client 1 I can still interact with that. But if I go to my third person example and change the press to on server, so right now I interact on server, and I click play, and move this client to Joe, also this one, and right now if I interact, you can see this is disabled for every player, so I'm not interacting on client, I'm interacting on server, so it's for every player. So this is also totally up to you which one do you want to use. The system totally supports multiplayer and no problem with that. And yeah, for the events we also have got on interactable subscribed, I'm just printing stuff, on interactable unsubscribed, and also there's on first interactable subscribe. So if we had no interactable subscribe, then the first will shoot an event. On can interact delegate, whatever we want, we can interact with something, and on no interactables left. So if we just unsubscribe from the last interactable, this can fire. And it's totally up to you. You just click on that and add the event. Oh, and also for the interactable option we have the use low priority first, and this is used for the prioritizing if we can select multiple ones. Okay, let me just, for the case, alright, show only one interactable name because this is the way I like it. And now, example interactable. So to make something interactable, we just add the interactable component here. And the first thing you want to do is go to the sphere collision and actually set its shape to something. So because this sphere is what our player overlaps with, so he can subscribe to it. So you want to actually make it big enough for you. And you don't need to worry for the ray casting or whatever because of the shape size if they overlap, because I've created an algorithm that says, alright, if this thing is another interactable, then we just ignore it. So don't worry about that. Alright, So you also see the name widget, interactable marker, and interaction widget on interactable, and you see them here because you have to change their position, because by default they have the position of the interactable, and it would be here in the middle and you wouldn't really see it, or it would be really bad. So you just click on that, go to the transform, and you set the Z or whatever you want to set, so you can actually see them better. Alright, so we've got the rarity value, and the rarity value, randomized rarity, so on and so forth. Those 4 options are just used totally up to you. This is randomized under the hood, and you can later get this in Blueprint. So you can, for example, if you have an item that you can collect, you have a loot box or whatever, you can just randomize certain rarity for it, and you can know, alright, this is normal, rare, epic, legendary, or whatever. So that's one way for it to go. Next thing is interactable name. You can set it for a certain interactable interaction text. If you won't set it, then you won't see anything. Always draw the backstring, so you can hide the backstrings that you see. Maximum distance to player, you can set it also. Player's angle margin of error to interactable, so as the margin of error if we are checking the angle. Hold button to interact, we can just instantly press E and interact. Can hold button, can hold multiple times, so pretty much you can just hold your E and it will continue with certain interactions on hold button. You can do that, for example, you're mining and you have to mine something 10 times, so you just hold your E and this is mining for you. You've got time in seconds for button hold, for how long you need to button hold. The priority, and as you know, this is used to prioritize items. You can randomize it if you want. Disable after usage, so you can pretty much disable it after one usage. Has to be reachable, so we can ignore that a certain item is reachable or not. Does distance to player matter, so you can set that the distance doesn't matter, you just have to subscribe to it. Does angle matter, so you can say, alright, does the angle matter or not? Whether something is disabled by default and you need to enable it somewhere. To enable something, you just call enable function. Yeah. And override debug strings location. If you do want to override, you can just set the new debug strings location. Draw debug line for reachability, and the debug line looks like this. You can just see how the raycast pretty much looks like. And use rotation variables from player components, so you can override your rotation variables. And yeah, for the events, we've got interact, and this is what happens when we interact with certain thing. This event is firing. On can interact delegate, so if we can interact with this item, this will fire. On selected, so if we selected it, this one will fire. And selected means if we are interacting, let me show you actually. I've got those 2 items, and right now the first one is selected because it was the first one I subscribed to, but if I right now can interact with that, this one is selected. On the left one I only see the marker because I can only show one name, and this pretty much shows me that alright, this one is selected and this stuff happens. Later when I'll add some touch options, some on-clicked, some more events and stuff, I will also think about showing which one is selected. Unsubscribe and unsubscribe, on name widgets and on widgets usable. This pretty much means when our widgets are created, so we can do something with them, because they are not created at the start, we need to actually do something so they are created. And yeah, so that's pretty much the whole thing. And now, as I said, I can just add a new blueprint, let it be an actor, let's call it test. I can place it somewhere, not that. I can just add a sphere and interactable. Alright, let's call it sphere and do stuff. So right now I'll move it a bit here, and here we've got our sphere, and I forgot to set up the collision for it, so let's just make it 250. Alright, so as you can see, I can interact with that, but the widgets are not in a place where I want them to be, so I just need to move them a bit higher. Let's say 70 for the name. For the marker, let's try 60. And for the uninteractable, let's try 65. Let's see how it looks. Alright, they are overlapping, so I can change them a bit to here's 70. That's marker, so 65. And for the name, let's go with 90. Alright, so they are kind of not overlapping, but this is totally like up to you. How do you want to set it? How do you want to use it? But here I've got my interactable, and now I can just add something on interact. So let's say that when I interact with this, I actually want to hold multiple times, and each time I just want to set my scale. Set word scale, and this will be get scale, and let's say plus each time I interact. Okay, so let's click play, let's go to it. I just hold my E, and each time I interact by holding my button, I don't do anything, it just sets its scale. So that will be it from me. That's like the whole interaction system. It works both for multiplayer and single player. You can do whatever you want. If you've got any questions, just ask me on Discord. If you have any problems, ask me on Discord, I can help you out. If you've got any suggestions, what can I add, improve, just ask me out immediately. Not a problem for me. And yeah, the system is pretty cheap for its like functionality, but I just want to give you something, guys, that you can work with in your games, and also you can learn some coding stuff from the project, because most of the whole logic is in C++. The only things that are in blueprints are just widgets. And yeah, so thank you for watching, and yeah, see you in the next one. Bye.